this week is National Apprenticeship Week, and what Apprenticeship Central and the IMI have done is, well, over the past few months we had lots of conversations around what we can do that really adds value to the industry. So today we're going to look to share some of those resources that we've created with you, but also really just have a very kind of chilled, casual session to talk about what it means to be in automotive today, how to get into the industry, what opportunities are available, and also share some success stories, which are really inspiring, not to make you cringe, Mike. So just to start off with some intros, my name's Eleanor Baker-Barnes. I'm the Commercial Director at Apprenticeship Central, and what we do is we help brilliant automotive employers find, keep, nurture and support brilliant apprentice talent. So I'll hand over to you, Amy.
Hi, thank you for having us, Eleanor. My name is Amy Wallace, and I'm the Careers Partnership Lead at the Institute of the Motor Industry. We are the professional body for those that work within automotive, also an awarding organisation, and of late doing some really great stuff within the apprenticeship space, policy space, and all things careers.
Thanks, Amy. And I'm Michael Massey, the Skills Competition Manager, also at the IMI, like Amy. And we are the route to the World Skills Competitions. So the automotive technology, automotive refinishing and painting, and the body repair as well, all go through the IMI and the World Skills umbrella. So we are the go-to team for that.
Lovely. Thanks, both. So to kind of get us started, and to fill you in, I guess, on why we've come about and why we're having these conversations, Amy and I got together last year and really started to talk about a lot of the feedback that we get from Apprenticeship Central's perspective. That's from people that are looking for apprentice opportunities in the industry, but also from employers around what they're looking for when it comes to finding brilliant apprentice talent. And then Amy, from yourself, obviously your network reaches wider. So what sort of feedback or conversations have you been having that kind of led to some of the things that we've created?
Really, the IMI's recent research has shown that unfortunately automotive apprenticeships have been in decline for a little while now, and it's important for us to understand why that has been. For us, it's an incredibly exciting and forward-thinking industry, and it's really helpful to understand the questions that people are asking as they're exploring automotive as a viable career option, or whether they're looking to start their career here or move into the sector. So the sort of feedback we hear is that people actually are really interested in automotive, but there tends to be perceptions around what the environment's like, the culture, the people you'll be working with, and most certainly about what it means to work in automotive. Historically, automotive has been hands-on the tools, often associated with grease and overalls, and really getting down and dirty in the vehicle itself. And the sector's changing, and when things change comes opportunity. Within the sector now, we have had electrification of vehicles, we have electric vehicles in the mainstream day to day, and this comes with all new technologies, all ways of diagnosing, and with that comes lots of new roles, new ways of working, and a lot of opportunity for people that want to join the sector. So really it's about clearing up some of those misconceptions so people can see the sector for what it is, and identify the right route for them, because there really is something for everybody within automotive.
Sure. And I think that kind of segues us really nicely into what we've created, because we are having these conversations so regularly. So what we didn't want to do was just create another PDF or another document that potentially kind of doesn't support in actually making forward progress. Instead, we're just going round and round in circles and everyone's having those conversations in isolation. So what we wanted to do collectively was create something that's going to be really valuable on the ground, talking to young people about what they want their future to look like, how automotive could play a part in that, but also valuable resources for adults, parents, support networks, careers advisors, employers, anyone that's potentially having those conversations. Because they are hard to start. They're hard to kind of engage and really uncover what someone actually wants to do, as opposed to just kind of, right, here's a route that someone suggested that I think would work for me, but actually that kind of mindset or that perception of what automotive was, as you've said, is so different now. So it's how do we open up those conversations to really get to the crux of what people were looking to do.
Absolutely, Eleanor. It's about expanding away from what job would you like to do, what career would you like to have, to open up those conversations around skills and strengths and growth and where you want to be and what values you have within the workplace, and exploring that, which can really shine a light on the various opportunities that there are to offer.
Absolutely. So I am going to have a little look now at some of the resources that we've created. So in terms of where you can find these resources, if we are live, then we will share them with anyone that's joined. If not, then we'll share links after, but the resources will be available on the Apprenticeship Central websites, through the IMI, and then they're free to download. So we're going to talk through a little bit about what they are. I'm not going to worry about sharing because I think it might add another layer of complication. And I think with these, it's really about actually opening up those conversations and interpreting them in the way that's right for you. One of the big things that Amy and I were talking about is there's no right way, there's no one size fits all, and this isn't a how-to guide, it's instead a let's start thinking about things, uncovering some of those things that you enjoy or that you're good at, and actually start having deeper conversations. So the first resource that we've created are conversation cards. Amy, do you want to talk us through a little bit about kind of what the conversations that cards are?
Yeah, absolutely. So the conversation cards we've created and we've provided in several areas with several topics. As I mentioned, skills and strengths, things you like to learn, things you like to do, what's important to you in the workplace, or what's important to you longer term in your career. Opening up these conversations and learning how to respond to some of the information that young people, or any age really, opens up to, it is vitally important to explore that fully. With the conversation cards, we've provided a little bit of guidance on how to use them, and that includes responding. And when you're speaking with somebody about careers, getting into a coaching mindset is really, really important. And exactly as you've said, Eleanor, allowing somebody to open up and get to that end result from exploring their own wants and needs is much more successful to gaining careers guidance or insight than telling. So there's some really useful phrasing in there on how to respond when somebody is opening up about what their wants or needs are with regards to their careers, and how you can really support somebody in not shutting down as you ask more and more questions. So there is some excellent cards that can be printed, or you can use from PDFs that have got open questions on there for you. You don't have to stick to the structure. You may choose to ask one section or ask one question and see where that conversation takes you. It might even be fun to flip it and maybe ask those questions to yourself, and give yourself a little bit of coaching. You never know, we might see some parents and influencers also seeking out their next role within Automotive. Ultimately, it's an end-to-end document that really can drive the conversation, ignite the thought process of what's important to you, and hopefully lead on to seeing what a wealth of opportunity there is awaiting for you within the sector.
I think even as we were creating them, I was almost thinking, well, actually, what's my answer to that? What do I really think about that? Because they're not things we all know life happens so quickly, and you kind of now, when we're having these conversations, we're probably sitting and thinking, actually, how did we get to this? And Mike, it'd be really interesting to explore some of your story and almost how that's panned out versus how you expected it to. But I think it's just so valuable to sometimes sit and take that time to think about what is really important before life starts happening.
Yeah, I think these are
really
going to be. I think they're going to be really beneficial, and just to carry on what Amy was saying, for teachers and for parents and mentors, it's going to give them some answers as well, because it could be that they have a gap of knowledge as well, and it could be that some of the more traditional routes come natural to them to explain as a route to go down. just thinking back, my parents wanted me to go down a traditional educational route, you know, college onto university and get a degree in whatever my interest could be. But I was in a fortunate position that I was confident enough to know that an apprenticeship was going to be the route for me. So kind of slightly different for me because I knew what it was that I wanted. But these cards that you've created and some of the questions that you ask yourself are really good to reflect on what you truly want or what you would be able to get out of a career as well. And like I mentioned, if it can fill those gaps of knowledge in automotive or the motor industry as a whole, then that's really going to be beneficial for everybody involved. So I think they're a good asset.
I think actually what's really interesting in what you just said there as well is the mentor piece. And I think this week especially there's been obviously so many conversations around apprentices in the workplace, but also what's really nice to see is that mentors are having some of the spotlight too, because they are almost and can sometimes be like the unsung heroes of a successful apprenticeship. But I think we probably all experience sometimes there might be a bit of disconnect, or it's just hard if it's a first time mentoring and a first time with it as an apprentice to kind of navigate that new relationship and how it works. And some of these conversations would be really beneficial to have early on so that there is that kind of deeper understanding of what makes that person tick, how can I best get the best out of them, how can I work with them in a way that's going to be meaningful to them. So yeah, absolutely, it's a way of getting in, but then also once you're in, actually really thinking about how to maximise kind of the opportunities and those relationships that you've got. That's a really good point. Lovely. So then that moves us on to the university versus apprenticeship kind of guidance sheet. Now, this is something that I think is getting a huge amount of coverage at the moment. What's the better route, uni or an apprenticeship? And the Prime Minister said this week that he wants apprenticeships to have the same, be treated in the same vein and have the same kind of regard as university, which I think is a huge statement and something that's definitely showing the evolution of the apprenticeship, what it means to be an apprentice, what your journey could look like after your apprenticeship. But I think to caveat that, it's also so vital that, as we said before, there's not a right or a wrong. It's what's right for you and what's right for you right now. So this document, it's not a prescribed, you've answered all of these questions, therefore this is it. It's to start to get you thinking about actually what is my learning style, how do I manage my own workload, do I need lots of structure and support, or actually is kind of a free diary that I'm responsible for something that's more suited to me. So it's starting to think about what works for you and then how that could potentially align with either an apprenticeship or a university degree.
It was really interesting to hear Mike say that he was weighing up that traditional route at first alongside his parents. And for him, he found his way quite naturally to the fact that apprenticeships were right for him. And we hear so often, I'm not sure, this is the advice I've had on one hand, apprenticeships look great. And again, it's misconceptions. And the government have also said that there's an information gap missing for what people know about how apprenticeships work. And I think that there is a lot more common knowledge around what the university route provides. And like you say, there is no right or wrong. University is absolutely a really successful pathway for many people. And apprenticeships are too. So weighing up the two against each other alongside what is important to you, what is important in your current personal circumstances, whether that's relating to finances, the working hours, where you're going to be situated in living. There are so many things to consider when you're taking that next step. So having a way of going through in a structured style, some of these real key areas are vital to be able to have more confidence and be more reassured that people are making the right decision. It can also be really helpful for sharing your position with somebody else. If you need to get somebody else's buy-in and support, it can be really helpful to show that you've fully explored an option and are making a fully informed decision.
How did your parents find that conversation, like when you had that with them? Were they quite open to it once you decided, or?
I think what helped was being able to explain what I wanted to try and get out of the next 5 to 10 years, really. And that was quite an obvious. And now that might sound, as a 16-year-old, quite a grown up or an advanced thing to think, but obviously everybody's different in how they work, but just going back to some of the work that you guys have been pulling together is definitely going to help fill that gap for those that don't. So my mum was quite keen on me to go to university because she went down that route, and you sort of promote what you've done yourself, because you think if you've been successful yourself or you've had a good experience, then that's what you're going to do. And typically, from experience, career fairs are flooded with teachers, mentors and parents and people that have gone down a certain route, and that's what they're comfortable with. So the expectation was there, but like I mentioned, that there was other things that I explored, and I think it was down to the things that I was interested in. So I was interested in two things to begin with. It was either sport or working in the motor industry, and I was fortunate enough that I got a chance to do both, not combined because that would be a chaotic job, but in two separate lives, I guess. But two really successful apprenticeship routes. And I'll be totally honest, it wasn't because school directed me that way, and it wasn't because my parents pushed me one way or the other. It was mainly down to doing some research and some work experience and having that sort of vocational desire to go and do that. Now, I appreciate that some people at the age of 16 or 18 when they finish school have no idea which route they want to go down. So one thing that I do think is evident, and that is that the apprenticeship route has been seen as the second option, or the perhaps less educational route, or perhaps the, well, if you're not going to do that, and then you've got to do that. And I think that was always seen as a sort of the worst step, particularly if you had potential to be able to go on and do further studies as well. But if it hasn't already changed, and you two will be more close to it than I, although in recent times I do work closely with apprentices, it's no longer that second choice, or that, well, if you're not going to go to uni, then you've got to get an apprenticeship. It's almost a choice of, okay, well, if that isn't the route for you, then look at all these fantastic options that are out there, and it's almost a bookshelf of opportunities. And who's to say that you can't do both, right? I've thought about doing a university degree alongside once I finished my MVQ at the time. So I did a relatively basic MVQ, but it was enough that I needed to get the qualifications to then continue to get the jobs that I've ended up with throughout my career. But there's no reason that you couldn't then go on to do the university route if at the age of 16, 17 or 18 it wasn't for you. Who's to say at 28, 29, 30 it could be, you know? And it's the same the other way around. People could go off to university, get their degree and follow that traditional route there, and then think, actually, my life circumstances have changed. I can now go and do an apprenticeship at the age of 30, which will be funded in some ways and not in others, because there's many different routes to get around that. And it's not a one shoe fits all sort of thing, but it's also not a once you've made a choice you have to live with it forever as well. There's opportunities there.
I think that's so incredibly important, is that, and it's hard because when you are at that school age and getting ready to leave school, all of your conversations are focusing, and your kind of whole education, Amy, we spoke about this, didn't we, when we met, like everything's gearing you up to finish school, and then you're out into the big wide world, and you've kind of got to have it all figured out and all planned and know what you want to do. And as we all get older, we realise that it really isn't that serious. Like there's always a pivot that you can have. And I heard someone say yesterday, there's not going to be career ladders anymore, it's career portfolios, because we're not just going to all be on this one journey that is just linear. There's going to be so many opportunities with the creation of new jobs and new industries, new technologies. We're seeing that now, roles that didn't exist 5-10 years ago, and that's just going to absolutely increase more than we could even imagine. So it doesn't have to be mapped out, for sure. And I also think, again, the government have made a recent change in apprenticeships. Used to be fully funded for anyone under the age of 22 for SMEs, so non-levy payers. That's increasing to 25 from kind of September this year, because again, they see value in, it's not a case of doing it immediately and employers taking on just school leavers. Apprenticeships are open to anyone of any age, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we go into one of the info sheets. But I think it is such a key point that even while we're talking about all of these things and having those conversations, it doesn't mean you have to find something and stick with it.
Absolutely.
So once we've got we've had these conversations, we've had the support to have those conversations, then we start to think about whether uni or an apprenticeship might be better for us. What we've then got to hopefully support with that is a bit of a deeper look at what apprenticeship routes are available in automotive and what university routes are available. So again, obviously, our business is Apprenticeship Central, so we are probably a little bit biased, but with this we wanted to make sure that it gave the information that everyone needs, because as we've said a few times, there is no right or wrong, and it's about mapping out everything. So when it comes to the apprenticeship route, we've detailed on there the different routes that are available in terms of now it's not just technical roles. And I think, as you said, Mike, I think people are starting to understand that, but also there's a lot of work that as an industry we can do to collectively change the perception of what it means to be in automotive. So it's not just your typical level 3 paint panel MET. They're there and they're brilliant and they absolutely are the right route for some people, but there's also things like customer service, business admin, HR, accountancy as entry level routes, but then also in upskilling as well. So as I said, they're open to anyone of any age. So we work with people, employers and candidates that are doing business management, leadership, coaching. So potentially even staying in your organisation, and it might be that you were technical before and actually now you're looking for something different in your career because your circumstances may have changed or you've evolved in what you want from work. So you're coming maybe now from the paint shop and moving into something that's more management and coaching led. So apprenticeships give you a route to do all of those things. And there's also information around kind of what it really means to be an apprentice. So what your week could look like, your off-the-job hours, some of those logistical things that, again, some people have absolutely got a really great understanding of, but for others, especially if they're having conversations around what they want to do with maybe family or support networks, really what it means to be an apprentice. And then we've also got a guide on university.
So important to get that information, isn't it, firsthand on what it means to be an apprentice. I've heard some really sweet stories of apprentices absolutely loving their apprenticeship, learning so much, receiving all of that mentorship, and they get to the end of the month and they can't believe that they've actually had a paycheck on top of that. You know, and you're listening to a young person having received their first paycheck, and they were just happy for the learning and the support and the hands-on experience, and to find out that they could earn while they're learning and to have that salary drop in really gives them a kickstart at a really early stage of their career. But you're right, it doesn't mean that it's the right way, and there are ample opportunities via the university route, particularly if you wish to go into engineering, R&D, and many roles that we don't even see yet. You know, you mentioned, Eleanor, about the sector changing and diversifying. Recent IMI studies show that there's currently over 200 roles across the sector. That is growing every single year. And those coming into the sector now are going to be the future of mobility. That means they're going to be the future of new job roles, new teams, new projects. So it really, really is an exciting time. And for some, a degree is right. And that's the avenue that we wanted to impartially show alongside the apprenticeships. So exactly the same as the apprenticeship sheet, we've worked on some top tips around university, which university courses you should consider dependent on what your interests are. For example, if you're into creative design and designing of vehicles and graphics and that end of the spectrum, then automotive and transport design can be right for you. If you're really interested in, designing from an engineering perspective, getting all of your CAD CAM staff, getting really deep ingrained in building parts at manufacturer end or later down the line, innovating new technology, then engineering is the route to go. It can be challenging because there are so many different universities throughout the UK, and the route to eligibility for university is different for each and every one. So it can be really helpful to get on that journey as early as possible to understand what you need to be doing at which point. Your GCSE grades will be important, as will UCAS applications, identifying the right university for you. There is a lot of support in this route, particularly if you are going from a sixth form college, or colleges can also have careers advice on site that can help you with UCAS applications. But it really, really does give clear structure in the sort of things to think about. That's before we even get to the financial aspect and considerations of university. there is a lot to consider. So having guidelines in a real clear place is ultimately what we wanted to provide, so that people not only could weigh up the best choice for them, but once they've considered that they think that's the best choice, to be able to consider all of the intricate parts of that choice. Hopefully so that they can continue to make really good choices and progress in all those different directions, as you say. But it's exciting. It's exciting to know that people can weigh up these options, and no matter what they choose, there is a really successful route awaiting them in automotive.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think that opportunity, like we're all so passionate about and genuinely believe that there is so much opportunity in this sector for brilliant people, and that's so varied. So you can't almost say this is where the opportunity sits, because it's everywhere. So I think, Mike, that takes us on quite nicely to talk a little bit about your journey. So I guess almost to start off, before we get into the whole where it started and where you're at now, you mentioned having those conversations with your parents that maybe university was something that they would prefer you to do, but an apprenticeship was right for you. Why did you think that? And then how did you go about navigating finding one, and what that first employment and kind of how your career started? Fill us in.
So when I was coming towards GCSE time, like you mentioned, them discussions are really all it's about is your exams and then what you're going to do after. And they try and the sort of message is you pick something now and that's going to be you now for the rest of time until you retire, which is a frightening aspect if you don't really know what it was you wanted to do. Now, I loved football and sport, but I wasn't very good at playing football. So I had to try and think of a way that I could match the two together. And I find myself in a really nice situation where our school offered work experience programs at the back end of once you finished your GCSEs, but also in year 10 as well, so much before you'd started your GCSEs. So my initiative was to write to football clubs and sports clubs and get some coaching experience. So I would see ex-professional footballers sort of teach and deliver football sessions or sports sessions to kids, and that was sort of my way around it, because I always had this desire to be able to pass messages on, to be able to teach or educate in some way, and that was a really nice sort of blend of the two. And to be honest, that's actually stuck with me all the way through. I keep mentioning sport. I know this is an automotive and motoring discussion here, but it never left me. And although I went back to college to do an apprenticeship a few years after the typical apprentice, so I was 19 when I did my second apprentice or 20 apprenticeship, after being stable in the industry and doing my level 1, level 2, level 3 through the IMI of car painting and getting some experience firsthand as a repairer myself, I went into training and education again, and it was how to train others to paint cars, how to train others to run the workshop efficiently. And what that did was give me such a broad range of skill sets or experiences to be able to sort of be in multiple different job roles in the industry. So yes, I started as a football coach that then went on to be a car painter, but now I get to manage the IMI skills competitions, which really sort of is my bag, because it's a mixture of teaching, education, it's inspiring the next generation to be able to be something that they would maybe hope to be, but also give them first-hand experience. Is that if you're doing your level 1 or your level 2, level 3 painting or panel beating or light vehicle mechanics or heavy goods training to be a technician, doesn't mean that has to be the end goal, and you can still go through the competitions, do really well and be really well thought of as a painter or as a technician, but it doesn't mean that has to be you forever, and you can break out into other things. But it's important that what I'm not trying to do is advocate people to get involved in the competitions to sort of build this CV to then leave their employer, but you will be a valuable apprentice and then a valuable member of staff after that at your current workplace. It's not just about looking good to build and go elsewhere, it's how can you sort of evolve in your own workplace too. And I've seen people, and I was thinking as you guys were talking earlier, and I won't mention his name or his company just because it's his career path, but he came as an apprentice, he took part in the skills competitions with the IMI, and he went through to the world skills competitions. He then finished being a technician in the same company. He got the bug for it and he liked it, and he joined the VDA coaching team. So now he trains people to be a vehicle damage assessor. He since then came back into the fold, and now he's a body shop manager. So he isn't particularly on the tools every day now, which is what he trained to do and was really good at doing. but he was able to use the skill sets that you get from the skills competitions and turn that into a career path for him. But I really like what you mentioned, just to wrap that bit up, about it's not a career ladder anymore, but it's the portfolio, and that really explains my experience. Was sports and leadership was one thing, and then coaching and training and education was the other. But it didn't matter what sort of area that was, whether it was in sports or automotive or anything else from there. I've been fortunate enough to have a range of jobs and work with a range of people. Some of the best people I ever worked with and the most bright and intelligent people came from university as chemists, for example, and we would work as a team to create the next best polishing compound or wax that would make that car sparkle. Or I would work with engineers to build the next polishing tool or a sanding tool to be able to sand the paint off the car to do the repairs as well. So in terms of breadth and potential experiences to have in the automotive industry, it's not that dark, oily workshop that you're lying on your back with spanners and oil dropping on your face. It can be if you want it to be, and a lot of people will find that's the place to be, of course. But that was the old perception, and it truly is not like that anymore. I mean, the amount of training academies that I get to go to now and experience the bright lights, the huge workshops, the latest equipment and the passion, and it's this new era of teachers and educators coming through as well that are trying to do exactly what we're doing here and promote the opportunities that are there. There's never been a better time to be involved, so this is the chance to take it whilst it's here, right?
I think that story is such a brilliant example of almost removing job titles and job descriptions and actually looking at skills, because what you've built over your journey that you've just spoken about is a selection of skills that now you're able to really combine them and put them all into practice. So rather than thinking I want to be a X or a Y, it's okay, what skills am I going to get from this particular route? And now you're kind of benefiting from just being a bit of a sponge and soaking it all up.
Too right, and a non-shameless plug, but the skills competitions do that, right? This is sometimes an opportunity for a youngster to be away from home for the first time, right? So they'll be in a hotel and they'll have to look at their own clock and find out what time they need to go down for dinner and what time they need to be at work the next day in the morning, and they need to follow instructions without their manager barking orders at them and be able to work under time restraint in a unfamiliar workspace, you know, doing things that they're not particularly too comfortable with doing because it's out of the norm. And it's that whole package, exactly what you mentioned. And even if they don't have a successful technical time at the skills competition, it doesn't mean that they're not going to grow as a person and be that more well-rounded employee, because that's the main goal for me as an individual, but for the group, is to, if one person goes back as a more well-rounded employee for their manager, then it's been a successful route.
Absolutely. So how does your career now, what you're doing now day to day, how does that compare to what you expected it to be when you first started?
I never expected, when I joined Chesterfield College to learn how to paint cars, when I saw all the graphics on the wall of the previous World Skills winner, would 10 years down the line I be the manager of that programme. Not a chance did I ever imagine that would be the case. So I took part in the competitions because I was quite driven. I was good at listening to instructions, and clearly I was technically quite competent to be able to do that. I went through the competitions and had a really good experience. I was able to travel to, just like I mentioned before, a couple of the state-of-the-art training facilities along that journey. So I was exposed to other experts in the industry, and it was my opportunity to ask questions and be that sponge and take on information that maybe your manager or your colleagues at the time, maybe they didn't have that experience, so they might not have that level of expertise. But the paint companies, the tool manufacturers, the training providers that you get the opportunity to go and see really elevated me, because I ended up winning the competition for my year, which was great. And then since then, it's really sort of helped me as an individual with all those soft skills that I mentioned previously, but also those technical skills that really helped me to build that foundation of who I am today in terms of where I place in the automotive industry. So it led me to being a little bit more senior as a job role at the paint shop that I worked at. And then when an opportunity came to join a large global manufacturer, I was so excited at the chance to do that. And that was where I could combine my teaching and education with manufacturing. So we would make products and make tools and fix solutions, and we'd go out to multiple body shops around the world and try and help people come along and do that. And that led me to a couple of different jobs recently, where I was able to work at one of the largest groups in the UK. They had nearly 70 body shops. I was the head of the technical team there, which was a really great experience because it was an opportunity to get involved in some management and to manage a technical training centre and really make an impact on my experiences and try and replicate that for others. So that was a great opportunity that came all through an apprenticeship route and taking part in the skills competitions. And then recently I joined the IMI as a skills competition manager, an opportunity that came a little bit sooner than we'd all hoped, but an opportunity that I really wanted to grasp with both hands when it came, and to make sure that we do Rich proud from where he left it, but also we can turn it into the next sort of era of the skills competition at the IMI. And I feel that someone that's been through that experience, been involved for the last 10 years in multiple ways, whether it's an ambassador or a judge or a skills coach or a lead judge, whatever those roles have been, they've been a staple core part of what I've done over the last decade, and now I'm in such a great position to be able to go and turn my experience and make sure that others get the same as I did.
It's amazing. I think it's such an incredible story, and something that I think really just almost is the epitome of everything that we're talking about today, is that there's no wrong route. Start. The automotive industry is so welcoming, it's so accepting. There's a place for you, and you can join and do incredible things. So I think we'll kind of wrap up there. Thank you so much to both of you. Obviously, the joint resources, so IMI and Apprenticeship Central, they'll be on the Apprenticeship Central website and the IMI website. We'll be sending them around. Please feel free to use them, download them, have the right conversations. We'd love to hear feedback. Anything that's come out of the conversations that you're having, we'd love to hear. So thank you both again. It's been great to chat.
Thanks for having us.